So, Rhonda Robichaud graduated from SF State with a degree in theater before working as a stage manager for over 20 years at Hunter Productions doing corporate events. She then moved on to Beach Blanket Babylon, a name you should remember if you were at our interview with Bryce last week, where she ran 8 shows a week. In London, she stage managed a variety of shows for 3 years during the Covent Garden Musical Theatre Festival and also built the sets and served as the stage manager for the Central St. Martin's School of Design Masterworks in Scenography. Here in San Francisco, she was the stage manager for a children's theater company started by a friend from Beach Blanket Babylon, a company that I have also worked for. And right before COVID hit, Rhonda was working as a show caller for Google Events. Rhonda, how are you doing?
I'm dandy. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
All right, so let's go into our first question. Why did you start doing theater?
I think because when I was a child, any movie that I went to see, I wanted to be that person, like whoever the lead was in it, was like, oh, maybe I should think about going into acting. And then I went to state for acting, and I stage managed my first show when I was 19. And I was like, oh, no, this is much better than acting. Because when you're acting, you don't know if you ever do any good. You know what I mean? Like, you say all your lines, you hit all your marks, but you don't know if you're any good. Whereas if you're the stage manager and you hit every cue and you make sure every fire gets put out before people see it in the theater, then you're pretty much a rock star.
So kind of there's like less uncertainty in terms of whether or not you would be like doing it correctly.
There's just more of a sense of accomplishment if you can get through an entire live event and hit every single cue perfectly.
Awesome. What would you say is the most memorable show experience you've had, and why was that experience memorable for you?
For sure, the most memorable show experience I had, Beach Blanket Babylon went over to do the Covent Garden Musical Theatre Festival for 3 weeks. And I went over as the dresser. And the British technical director there was like, oh my God, you're so good. You have to come and work our show next year. And, you know, I got back and I was pretty much done with Beach Blanket by the time I got back. So I quit that and I went and got my student status so I could get a work permit to go and work at the Covent Garden Theatre Festival. And I got there and I was trained on the fly floor. So 1 day of training, the day after I arrived, on the fly floor. So I was all prepared to do the scenery in and out. And I want to say an hour before the show, the stage manager came in and said, right, my ASM is out with appendicitis. Who's running stage left? And I said, I've stage managed before. So and we sat there and she gave me every cue and I wrote out every single cue. And I had 14 pages of cues and we were doing a 3.5 hour version of Deflator Mouse. And I pinned the notes to my shirt and I went and did the show for the next, like, somebody else came in and did the fly floor because I was doing stage left. That was by far the most memorable experience. And it was, yeah, it was like adrenaline. Yes.
That was like the first time that you had seen the cue sheet for that show, so you just kind of had to get right into it?
It wasn't even a cue sheet. Like, they had been rehearsing so much that they didn't even have cue sheets. Like, she told me, you pull the flat here, you do this, then you set this cart on the orange mark, and I wrote all of the cues out longhand. And like I said, I pinned them to me. And then as I was done, I like folded them over and pinned it again. It was just, yeah. That's the beauty of live theater.
That's impressive. Who would you say was your greatest inspiration when you were getting into theater? Like, what kind of inspired you to do that?
I don't know. Like I said, I went the acting route and very quickly got into the tech side of it. And there's, you know, we've all done live theater now. There's just nothing like it's a completely Zen experience. There's no way you can be thinking about your grocery shopping. Like, you just have to be totally in the moment doing what you're doing and thinking about what the next cue is that you have coming up. You have to be completely in the moment. So it's just I think once you start doing it, you just want to do more of it.
So it was more like the experience inspiring you to keep going forward with it, as opposed to.
For sure.
So you started out doing corporate events, and what would you say are some of the differences between stage managing corporate events and a more traditional theatrical production?
You don't get to yell at the corporate clients. That's like the main difference. Like, because you don't get to go and say, I need all people on stage. You don't, none of that. To be like, do you think that it would be a good idea to practice your entrance and exits now? I would very much like to see your PowerPoint deck. Like, it's a whole different mentality. It's a much more, may I make a helpful suggestion? As opposed to theater, where you're the person in charge and people actually want to be told, it's time for places, it's time to do this, you missed your mark, you know. So it's different politics.
But like the actual kind of way that you had to call things out at the times and like make sure that every cue was correct, all of that remained the same throughout both corporate events and theater.
Absolutely. When you're on the headsets with your fellow technicians, that's the same. It's dealing with talent, basically. There's a much different approach in the theater rather than in a corporate event. Oh, and corporates pay like 100 times more than theater pays. Like, you have to put your dues in, and theater is a great experience, and my theater background gave me the creativity to deal with things in the corporate structure that I wouldn't have had if I had just jumped straight to corporate, because there's more problem solving in theater than there is when you can just throw money at it. So corporates tend to just throw money at things, but then when things go wrong or break down, you need to know about duct tape, Dubatine, and hot glue. Like, you just, yeah.
You kind of have to have that theater tech sensibility in order to be able to solve the problems that money can't solve.
Oh, right, or that money didn't foresee, or that, you know, yeah.
Okay, so you worked at Beach Blanket Babylon, as did many of our future guests and our past guest. What stuck with you specifically about that show?
Oh, the reason that the tech director in London asked me back is because I started out as a technical understudy for Beach Blanket, which meant I was trained on the follow spot. I was trained on a, trying not to swear, manual lighting board. Like, they didn't, when I was doing it, they didn't even have a computerized digital lighting board. They had a manual. We had something, I hated lights. I hated being in the lighting tower more than anything. There was something called a pencil cue that you literally had to take 2 pencils and wipe the dimmers as quickly as you can with both hands so that you would have enough time to reset them for the next cue. It was like, I swear to God, I took Pepto-Bismol up into the tower with me. Like, it was too much. But anyway, trained on the follow spot, trained on the manual lighting board, trained on the stage left, trained on the props, trained for costumes. And then after maybe 6 months or so, they also asked me to understudy the stage manager. So I just had this like broad, overarching sense of what all of the different positions were. And because I was there, you know, so long, it just gave me a very, I think a good understanding of what I was asking all of the technicians to do as a stage manager, and making sure that they were realistic asks, having done all the positions before.
So did you have kind of that base of knowledge of every department before you went into Beach Blanket, and then you got retrained at the theater for that specific show? Or were you more specialized in one area and then?
Well, Beach Blanket wasn't too long after I graduated from college. So I think I graduated from college in '89 and I started Beach Blanket in '92. So, you know, you have to take all of the things in college. If you're majoring in theater, you have to take a directing class, you have to take an acting class, you have to do scenery and props, you have to do lighting and design. They want you to have, so I had that educational background, but then Beach Blanket was like, here you are now in the trenches 8 shows a week. Let's do this. It's a very different thing when it's a long running, because anyone can suck it up through a 2-week run or a 3-week run. But when the weeks span into years, it's a different kind of thing.
Yeah. So what brought you to London, and how was it working in theater in the UK instead of the US? Like, what were kind of the differences in the vibe there?
This was, okay, so what brought me to London, I already addressed, because we went there with Beach Blanket, and then the tech director was impressed with my work and asked me back. So the differences there, though, which were really interesting, because I did several different shows for the Music Theater Festival, and then I got asked by the Deflator Mouse cast. In London, they have a stage manager who's in charge of the stage and all of the everybody, who is stage right. They have an assistant stage manager who is stage left and takes care of all the traffic on the stage left side and the setting of the props and all of the things. And then they have something called a deputy stage manager, and they're the ones that are actually in the booth calling all the lighting and sound cues. So I deputy stage managed at a different venue for the Deflator Mouse cast and crew, and they made fun of me because I called places instead of starters, and I called 10-minute until curtain, and they're like, oh, it's so quaint. Thank you. And I tried my best, and they are very, very formal over there. It's at, I don't even know if it's 5-minute call. I want to say 3-minute call. And we are at beginners. Mr. Andrews, Miss Smith, Miss Wilcox, will you report stage right? Like, they're just very, very formal, which I thought was interesting. And then another difference, which I'm sure you will all appreciate. So it was, oh, okay. So my previous story, an hour before, no, it was a half hour before, the stage manager came in and said, I've lost my ASM, because we were all up in the green room, and the tech director for the show was like, oi, Rhonda, we're going down to the pub and grab a quick pint. And I said, oh, I'm working the fly floor today. And he's like, yeah, that's not for another half hour yet. Come on. Like, no, thank you. I will not have a beer before I move the heavy scenery in and out. No, thank you. So there's a bit of a different attitude about drinking and working. And I don't think that it was just that one particular theater. I think it was a yes.
So by having kind of done stuff there for a number of years, would you say like you became more accustomed to that way of doing it, and you're able to like code switch between the two?
I'm sorry, what was that?
After, because I know you did that multiple times. After working there, kind of, were you able to code switch between like the English way of doing it and the American way of doing it, kind of just figure that out?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting when you go, it's like, especially the first time that I went, like I said, I got my student status and I went for 3.5 months, and I figured I'd do the 3-week Covent Garden bit, and then I'd get a job bartending or something like that, and I would just travel Europe. But I keep getting offers of work. So I did the 3-week Covent Garden Festival, which was a variety of different things. And then they asked me to deputy stage manage a couple of productions for the Deflator Mouse. Then there was a Fringe Festival show called Disco Pigs that was going into the Unicorn Theater, where I was stationed for most of the Covent Garden thing. And they were like, oh, we could really use some help here. I'm like, sure, I'll do that. And then the Central St. Martin's thing came up, and we got down to, I've got 2 weeks left. And someone said, I swear to God, the Mousetrap is looking for a deputy stage manager. Are you interested? And I'm like, no, I know I am not. I am going to the Fringe Festival for my last 2 weeks in Europe. I am done. Like, so I only got to see England and Scotland, but the experience stage managing all of those different was just incredible. Was just incredible. And the Central St. Martin's one was great because they were looking for someone to help build, and they were looking for a stage manager, because the Central St. Martin's thing was, it's called the Master's Works in Scenography. So these 12 different graduates had decided that they were going to do this as their master works for their scenography, and they came up with all of these crazy ideas but had no idea how to implement them. So one of my flatmates at the time was a prop maker, and she's like, okay, so I'll build all the sets and then you stage manage the set, and then we'll just do it. And so we sold ourselves as a team, and we got hired as a team. And then we went in, and one woman wanted, you know, like a hard set, like a 3-dimensional set, and somebody else needed canvas stretched, and somebody else wanted like this crazy like a box that could be transported to the middle of a park that could be got into and have a car battery in it so it could play music out of it. But we couldn't see who was in it operating it. So it had to be flexible, but she didn't want any seams showing, like, oh, it was a challenge. So we get this. And then I say to my friend Rachel, I'm like, okay, so you know how to do a hard flat, right? And she's like, no. Like, what do you mean? You're supposed to be the builder. And she's like, oh, you know, I was just doing the whole fake it till you make it. I'm like, okay, so now we're on the hook. Like, I swear to God, I don't even know where I heard about it. I think that maybe John had told me about it. It's a book called The Stage Manager's Handbook, and it walks you through absolutely everything you could ever want to do. It tells you how to stretch fabric. It tells you how to make a soft sculpture. It tells you how to do a load-bearing platform, like every knot you could possibly want to tie something off. The Stage Manager's Handbook. Yeah. It was, yeah.
Yeah. So everyone in Tech Club, you all should know, fake it till you make it is not a thing that you should do in theater.
It's
not.
not.
It doesn't work.
Oh my God, no, it is not.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the most soul crushing moments of my life. I'm like, I am going to be an abject failure on all of these projects because, like, I'm organized. I can call all of your cues. I can like do all of the things, schedule all of your ins, schedule all of the set in, the lighting in, the focus, but I can do all of the things. But I hadn't built anything up to that point. So yeah, it was exciting. It was exciting. And it all turned out like we figured it out. We figured it out.
That's great.
Yeah.
So everyone, just slight warning, we've had some issues trying to get into our club bank account. Still, we're still trying to figure that out. So we do not have premium Zoom. So when the meeting does eventually end, it is the same Zoom code to get back in, and we will wait for you guys to all come back. Okay. So moving on. So to kind of build off of the idea of you having to do all those different shows for the Masterworks plus like the musical theater festival, what was the kind of the challenges of having to do so many different shows in a row, and having to like learn new cues and everything for each one?
You know, I mean, that's all the fun bit, right? Like just figuring it out. It's you had like maybe a week of rehearsal for each of the different shows. And the first year that I did the musical theater, one of the, oh my God, he was so brilliant. I loved him. David Edwards was an opera director, and he had decided that he could commit to the Covent Garden Theater Festival for 3 years in a row. So we did 3 out of the 4 Ring Cycle operas, but it was fantastic. Like Rheingold. So at the end of Rheingold, No, at the end of the Valkyries, sorry. But Rheingold was just this like fabulous, he had, you know, the silks being the river that the Rhine maidens came out of. And it was just all very, very creative and very, very minimalist. Like he didn't have a full orchestra. I think he had dual pianos. And all three of those productions were just, the Valkyrie were set in it wasn't quite the round, but it was like a thrust stage in a nightclub. And he had the two pianos going, and the Valkyries were all high-powered business women in suits. And they had this huge kind of like light up glow table that they moved around giant chess pieces. And they had this light up thing behind them where wherever they moved a big chess piece, like the horse, then a different country lit up. And it was just beautiful. And he would go around to the actresses and say, all right, so you're the twins. You're very mischievous. So just be mischievous, but you look up to Brunhilde. So when she's in the room, pay attention to her. Like it was none of this real stilted, and then you stand here and turn 3/4 and sing the aria. It was just much more of a frenetic flow. And he had the best set designer working with him, Colin. So at the end of the Valkyries, instead of Brunhilde being consigned to the flames of Valhalla, she was on a table hooked up to tubes, and this big, huge, frosted metal shield window came down over her as she was cryogenically frozen. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. So you graduated with a degree in theater. What would you say you enjoyed about learning theater in college, and how do you think that education was able to help prepare you for your later technical theater jobs?
What would I say that I enjoyed about learning theater in college?
Yeah. What kind of, how was that experience, like a good experience for you, and how did that bleed into your later technical theater jobs?
Well, definitely. It was a good experience to prepare me for what outside theater could be like. And I feel very fortunate to have been, the first job I got outside of college was not actually in theater, it was with an archaeological consulting firm. And I did that for 1.5 years. And then archaeology is one of those really flexible things. You can take as much time off to do something else as you want, because with archaeology, you're always taking a summer off of your job to go do pre-Columbian, or pre-Incan digs in Colombia. Like you've got to go to dive school in the Bahamas. Like, so I would be able to say things like, hey, I'm taking December off because I have corporates. And that's, my boss was like, okay, go. Like I took 3.5 months off to do the Covent Garden stuff. And he's like, fine, go do whatever you want. So the theater experience, I think, obviously what I learned in school prepared me for all of the other things that I did. But I think it also really translates well into, you have to be an effective communicator. You have to work as a team. Like you can take what you learn as theater technicians and translate it to any other kind of work, because it's one of those things that a lot of different disciplines call on. Like it's not so much no one can do theater by themselves. I mean, even one-woman theater, you still need a stage manager, you still need a light operator, you still need a sound operator. Like it's always a team job.
So yeah, to kind of build off of that, like how would you say necessarily, other than just the team aspect, like that, all the theater work that you've done has helped you with your other jobs, that maybe archaeology and other things that you've done?
Being incredibly organized, doing all the troubleshooting, like especially when you're going into the field and you're excavating, like you have 2 weeks to excavate an entire floor or an entire boat. Like you have to think about what are the important pieces of information. It helps with pre-planning, because theater is all about pre-planning. Like you plan for everything that you can possibly think of so that you have the bandwidth to deal with the, oh, and her dress just fell off. Like, you know what I mean? Like you have to think ahead about all of the different things that could happen so that you are prepared for, didn't see that one coming, but I'll do this. And I think that that is something that a lot of people that go into different disciplines don't think about. I think that a lot of people, that major in business or whatever, I don't know that they have that much pre-planning. I don't know, because I've never majored in business, so I got nothing.
How did the work that you did for Hunter's corporate events kind of differ from the work that you did with Google? Obviously, you did kind of those large Google events. How would you say that that was different than the stuff you did at Hunter's?
Hunter events, my job there was more of like an associate producer. So Bob is great at all of the front of house stuff, at all of the design, at all of the everything. He needed me to be kind of, he keeps calling me his tech director, although I wouldn't use that phrase because that implies that I know what every single lighting instrument is and how to patch and all of that, and that is not me. But for Bob's purposes, I was his technical director. So I would work with the lighting people and achieve the looks that we need and get the washes on the stage and set the presets and do all that. But then I also would help with the decor and, sourcing or stuffing the goodie bags or whatever. It was a much broader, scope of work. Whereas Google, the show caller calls the show. She doesn't talk to the client. There are producers there to do that. She doesn't do anything except call the show. That's it. Done. Yeah.
So it's kind of less cross-discipline stuff?
Oh yeah, no cross-discipline stuff. There's a team of thousands. There's an A1 and an A2. So the A1 is mixing the sound in the room and the A2 is miking every speaker up. There's an engineer, there's someone on graphics, there's the person that's on graphics is usually on the countdown timer. There's always a lead producer and a second producer that deal with the client, and that's Google, like anyone from Google. There is, even if it's not being streamed, it's being recorded. So there is a camera director on another channel, and they've got 3 remote cameras in this facility filming what's going on. So 2 to 3 camera operators, and then an engineer. It's just, everybody is super tricked out. Everyone is very specialized and everyone is baller, top of their game. Not to say that I am, but the caliber of people that you work with, doing corporate events in San Francisco, you have to work with Local 16, which is the theater techs local. And this is the thing about getting, because all of the hotels that you do corporate events in are union, just straight up. So you get your workers from the union. And in all my years of doing corporates in San Francisco, the people from Local 16 are either rock star good at what they do or dumb as a box of rocks. There is no mediocre. There's no one who's mediocre. There's no one who's just so-so. They either have their stuff completely dialed, or you have to do the, oh, let me take your hand and walk you through. Yeah, I was doing a biotech conference at Moscone once, and they had this cute little oh, we've got the Jeopardy theme song, and then we've got a buzzer, and we're going to play this fake Jeopardy game. And the sound guy, in between these 1 cues, he kept being, he's like, there's no lead. we would go back, and the buzzer kept going off too soon before I called it. I'm like, please wait for my call. And it happened like 2 more times. I'm like, you have to wait for my call. And he said, I'm so sorry, like there's no lead on this. So when I switch over, it just automatically goes. I'm like, how about you wait to switch over until I call it, if there's no lead on it? He's like, oh, you think that will work? I'm like, I think it might. I just think it might. So it's a very different thing working with people that you know are rock star, as opposed to like always, like when you're walking into the union shops in San Francisco, it's like, what am I gonna get? Like, who's it going to be today, and how much hand holding am I going to have to do? And like, you can't get angry and you can't get tense. You have to like, let's see if we can work through this and figure it out together. So at ASG, when we do Google events, there's none of that. Everyone is like, they just have their stuff dialed, and it's exhilarating to work with people who are that on top of their game.
And so you mentioned the presence of cameras at those Google events. How would you say that like changes what you have to do? Because obviously with theater, you are kind of trying to make it so the audience gets the best experience. With that, are you trying to more gear it toward the camera to make sure that that's a better view?
That has nothing to do with me, because they have a camera director who is on a different frequency that makes all of those calls and has his monitor set up to do all of that. I am the in-room experience only for that. So I've never had to call switches between cameras.
Awesome. So your stuff doesn't have to like kind of change between a camera event or a no camera event.
No.
That's great.
Yeah.
So this was kind of a fun one, but what show that's currently running, if you didn't have to think about anything else, just like what you would most want to do, what would you most want to work on? Like a show or experience or something like that?
What show would I most want to work on? Well, we can't work on anything right now because theater's dead. So I don't even know. Like, if in the before times?
In the before times or in the after times? Either one.
Yes, the before times and the after times. Well, that's the whole thing, is like, I have been super spoiled by the Google work, because it's very, very intense work, but it's not all the time. Like, I don't know if I'd be up for doing an 8 shows a week show again. I don't know. I think that one stumped me.
All right. Well, our last question from me anyway, before we get into our audience questions. Do you have any tips for us students that are trying to get into theater professionally?
Yeah, start doing professional theater. Like, Brody's done what, 2 or 3 shows already? 2. Okay. Well, whenever in the after times, hopefully you'll be available to do more. But there are, theater organizations, and there's a whole bunch of theater in San Francisco, Black Box Theater, when it gets back and up and running, so get in contact with the production directors there and offer to volunteer. Like, say, I'd like to learn how to A2, or I'd like to volunteer to do this, and just, see what you get. They will be thrilled at the extra body, like absolutely thrilled. Yeah. So yeah, get involved.
And all of you who are in the club, at least after a couple of the lectures, and after you've gotten some of that down, you'll be prepared to be able to do stuff like that. So definitely keep an eye out. Great. I will now turn it over to Mandy for your audience question. If you have an audience question that you have not yet put in the chat, please do so that she can ask it. All right, take it away, Mandy.
Okay, let's see. The first question sent in is, what would you say is the most fulfilling thing about your job in theater tech?
Well, like Brody said, a friend of mine from Beach Blanket started children's theater, and it's a whole nother, like, it's the exact opposite of corporate because you are allowed to yell at the kids, but they don't listen to you. So it's challenging, but it's also like so rewarding when, you know, the 8-year-old that's playing Zazu in The Lion King, like remembers all of their lines and gets it right. And just being able to work with children's theater and give them that first rush of what it is to do theater is just, that has to be the most rewarding for me.
That sounds amazing. Also, just I think kids are very cute when they're just trying to figure it out. So that's great. The second question, it says, how difficult was it for you to be able to make a living while working in theater? Did you ever have to juggle non-theater jobs with shows to pay bills?
Well, that is, I feel very, very blessed. I want to say about 50% of my professional life has been in theater, and the other 50% has been doing archaeology. So it just seemed like whenever theater ran a little bit dry, I got a call from an archaeologist was like, we'd like you to work from home for us, just doing these reports. What do you think? And be like, yeah, that'd be great. So like I said, I worked for a decade for an archaeological consulting firm that had no problem with me taking May and June off to go do Covent Garden, and no problem with me taking all of December off to do corporate events because I had enough work, you know. So I've been very fortunate. I haven't had to do a lot of juggling.
It sounds honestly very nice to have that kind of balance between both theater and non-theater, because I know it can be tough when you're just on and on in the theater. But I think this is the last question I received, unless someone else asked a question when I got kicked out earlier. It says, for the shows that you did design for, did you have a specific process or main source of inspiration that helped you?
The shows that I had to do the design for at Central St. Martin's were not mine. They were, these people had they were the masterworks in scenography. So they told us what they wanted and we made it happen. Like, I mean, and there were some crazy, they came in with their sketches of, I'll give you one example. This is probably I mean, it's not even the craziest. The box in the middle of the park was one of the craziest. But the Hermione was from Greece, and she came in and she had this sketch of this round cylinder of fabric that was maybe 12 feet high and wide enough to have like a couple of rows of 15 chairs in. And we were doing this in a white box, like a television studio white box. And they had a grid. They had a light grid that we could hang off of. But what she wanted to happen is the cylinder of white fabric, and then chairs inside, and then chairs in the round outside of it. And it was called The Cave. And her actors had silhouettes of like people and animals and flashlights. So the people inside the tube, which was lit by a single light inside the tube. But so inside the tube, they got the shadow play of all of these different things, whereas the people outside of the tube got to see how the art was created on the inside. And it had this wacky sound track that went with it that was very like mysterious. But at the end, what she wanted was on the final downbeat of the drum or whatever it was, that the tube would collapse so that the interior and the exterior would then blend together. And that was challenging. So we got a whole bunch of 1-bys and some PVC, and we bent the PVC around this lattice of 1-bys, and we drilled all the way through the 1-bys so that they were being held by just one bolt, and we rigged it down and we cleated it off so that at the end, and all of the cloth was being held up at this one point. So at the end, we just had to pull one thing, the bolt went straight up, all of the lines released, and the thing dropped to the floor, and just the skeleton of the PVCs and the 1-bys were up. And it was like, we just had to figure it out. We didn't design it, but we had to figure out a way to rig it and make it happen. And that was, yes, that whole, the Central St. Martin's thing was one of the most stressful, creative, fantastic times of my life. Just, yeah. I mean, we could spend 2 hours just on the stories from those builds alone. And the woman who was doing her piece in a car park, and God bless her, she's like, well, I need it to have, she wanted a 15-foot pile of sand in this car park. And she needed a structure in a cross over it that you could roll silver balls down. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're figuring this out. We'll figure it out. And then she said, and then I also need blue flame. I'm like, mm-mm. And she's like, no, yes. I'm like, no. And she's like, yeah, no, blue flame. I'm like, no, you don't get flame. You're in a car park next to the main gas generator. You do not get flame. Like, I'm sorry. I got you your circle of sand. I got you your structure for rolling your balls. You do not get flame.
Oh, thank you so much for that story. That I'm like imagining that and just like, there is no flame. I'm sorry. And just no.
No flame.